Good morning, and thank you for having me here. You know, just a few days ago, I was talking to a friend over coffee, and she asked me, how long have I been doing photography? And I had to scratch my head a bit and kind of go back in time, and then I realized it's been like about 33 years. It's a long time, and the journey has been pretty long. And that's one of the first pictures that I did, maybe about 30 or 31 years ago, which is still one of my favorite pictures. When I was introduced to photography, the camera and the film, I thought, were the greatest enablers for visual expression, of creativity. It's because I couldn't draw, and I still can't draw. That's why for me, camera was a great tool. And the darkroom where we made our prints seemed like a magical world, a magical realm where I could conjure these images that were in my head onto paper. And I still feel the darkroom is a magical world. That's how photography began for me, and that's one of the first pictures that. Which side is okay? These are one of the first pictures that I shot, in the beginning, in the 80s, mid 80s and late 80s. The great photographer Raghu Rai said that photography is like a darshan of life. Yes, it is. It is for me. It has been a darshan of life. Our subject, whoever it is, whether it's a person or a landscape or an object, it's always the divinity for us, for photographers. So as we go out and meet people, it's we are looking at our own God, our deity, and that's what photography is all about. So I completely agree with Raghu's thought processes. So few years ago, I was presented myself for this a deity kind of presented herself in front of me in Sri Lanka, and her name is Menake, and she was a suicide bomber of the LTTE, and she was in captivity. And I was there with the great conflict area journalist called Jan Goodwin, who has reported from various parts of the world on conflicts to do a profile on the suicide bomber of LTTE, a female suicide bomber. It took us about 6 months to set this interview up, and we were there finally sometime in 2007, early 2007. As we spoke to her, as I photographed her, and as I understood her life, she said one thing to me and to Jan. She said that I have agreed for this interview and for you to photograph me because I thought this will help me save my life and that they won't kill me. That was a big responsibility thrust upon me and on Jan, who's the writer. And in the same, that was Menake in herself. In the same trip, in the same assignment, we went to various parts of Sri Lanka where the conflict was raging. I met this young lady called Jayanti Thambi Vattanam in a place called Wakarai, where the battle had just ended. The internally displaced people, she was one of them, had just come back to her house, and she had run away from when the war had begun. And we went to her house to see how things were, and this is how it was. This was her house, and there she was with the sister, looking at trying to salvage things. She was quiet all through, and I was photographing her. And there was a little photograph or a negative in her hand of something, of a memory that was left behind by the soldiers who had inhabited her house, And just imagine, we're going back into her house where, she has lost almost everything. Then I met some more people, like this gentleman over here and this little young girl. So this gentleman was looking for his daughter who had gone missing for several years, okay? This young girl was looking for her father who had gone missing by the time, she had never seen her. She was like 2 years old and he went missing, and she was about 19 or so, for 17 or odd years her family have been looking for her, and she's grown up and now she was looking for her. And this is one image from the assignment where the Kalashnikov or the AK-47, which I think symbolizes the war for us, for conflicts, is the most potent symbol. I just photographed it and showed it to you. Before this trip, I had been to Sri Lanka again to photograph the immediate aftermath of tsunami. And it was a great tragedy. And as I went photographing people's lives after the tragedy, I met this fisherman in Gaul who had lost everything, and this young little baby in a refugee camp, and this lady with the daughter in the house, which was only this part remained. Everything had gone, washed away. And this was on 31st of December 2004. As the year was ending, I was shooting a picture in her house. And what happens? What's all of them keep telling me that the stories that you do, the photographs that you take, we hope will change our lives, will bring hope to us, bring change to us, and better our lives. And that's a very big responsibility. As I keep saying, it's a very big responsibility thrust upon a photojournalist. We really don't know. I really don't know whether that will happen. Sometimes it may happen, sometimes it may not. But the responsibility is amazing, and sometimes daunting. So how does one cope up with that? Knowing that your work may impact them or may not impact them. Most likely it may not. But sometimes, people like. And again, this is another story where I went to Orissa to photograph the later aftermath of a super cyclone that hit them in 90s. And, this lady, her name is Deepa Mandal. She was living, this was, I think, sometime in 2000 or 2001. And she was living at about 15 rupees per day. That was all the money that she had. And her husband was, killed by the super cyclone. And, she was trying to make ends meet. She still called me inside, and she was kind of upset that because she didn't have anything to offer me. I said I didn't want to, and I just wanted to know her story. And again, she too thought the work was going to help her. Like this lady who had helped her daughter, from people who were trying to swindle away the compensation money that they got. Again, at the survival of the super cyclone, was also, happy to pose for my pictures, hoping that it'll change their lives. But unfortunately, we don't know whether that happens or not. And sometimes it's not just the disasters. I also get to shoot pictures like these of people such as Michael Jackson, whom I had a chance to photograph when he was in India in a very close quarters. So a photographer goes through all these assignments, all these different kinds of work, and what do you do? How do you balance yourself, and how do you make sure that you don't go completely insane, at the end of your photographic assignments? This is a picture that I photographed during the tsunami, just after the tsunami. Is that I think you have to kind of, have to keep telling ourselves that we are bearing witness. And we are honestly trying to tell our stories to the world, hoping that it may impact or it may not. But we say that we keep doing our job and we bear a witness. So we have to develop, photojournalists have to develop a bit of Zen. We have to develop a little bit of Buddha in ourselves to keep doing our work as honestly we can. So that as a kind of a base, I would like to talk about a project that has kind of defined me. A kind of a turning point that came in my life sometime in the mid-90s, and then actually took place sometime in 2000. The seed of that had started many years ago, in mid-80s actually, when I took a train to Delhi to meet some senior photographers and show them my work. I met a lady in the train that went from Mangalore to Delhi, somewhere in Nagpur, who was going to Bhopal to see her father who was ailing. Her mother had died in the gas tragedy, and she was going to see her father. And, I got talking to her, and I asked if they had got any compensation. she said that they did get compensation. She was from a very poor family of 10,000 rupees, and 10,000 was a big money those days. And but she said that 5,000 to wo log kha gaye. The people who dispersed the money had taken 5,000 rupees as a bribe. So it kind of made very deep impact in me, even at the very early stage of my life. And it was going on, the churn was going on. I was wondering what kind of society we had already become by that time. So much later, this story was led to a variety of different things in my life. One is meeting people who were making great contributions to society against personal odds. And they were, I thought, should be our role models, our heroes. So a project called Unsung began. That was in the mid 2000s. Around 2004 is when I started working on this project called Unsung, to tell the stories of unsung heroes of India, people who have contributed to society against great personal odds, who ought to be our role models. The book was published in 2007, which featured the stories of 9 people. There are some of them here. It's Mr. Vijayanatha Shenoy, who resurrected the architectural heritage of coastal Karnataka in the heritage village that he has built. Mr. Chewang Norfel, who makes glaciers in the Ladakh Himalayas. At the time of global warming and melting glaciers, he has kind of worked a simple method to reverse that and provide water for the people. George Pulikutil, who is a former Jesuit priest, who is a human rights advocate, human rights lawyer, fights for the human rights of the poor using judiciary. Hasnat Mansoor, she has been able to set up an organization and teach the fundamental Quranic and our constitutional rights to the poor Muslim women of Bangalore and around. K.M. Chinnappa, who's one of the greatest range forest officers we have ever seen, who kind of transformed Nagarhole National Park from poachers' heaven to poachers to a heaven to animals. And Lakshman Singh of Lapodia in Rajasthan, who transformed his drought-prone village into a water-rich village. In his village, you can't sit and talk in the evening because your voice will be drowned by birdsong. And there are about 1 million trees. And Ilango, Ramaswamy Ilango, who transformed his village into an economically independent village and realized Gandhi's vision of Gram Swaraj, and trained several hundred or a couple of thousand panchayat leaders in the last several years. This is Subhashini Mistry, who was a vegetable seller, and when her husband died of gastroenteritis and she couldn't afford treatment, she took a vow on his deathbed saying that that she wouldn't let anyone else suffer the way she did. And over the next 20 years, she saved 20,000 rupees to build a hut and start a hospital called Humanity Hospital, which is now about 10,000 square feet and has helped hundreds and thousands of people near Kolkata. This is Tulasi Munda, who is set up in a school in the Serenda district of Orissa, which is really boondocks, which is beyond everything. It's a mining belt, and she has she started a school under a mahua tree. And today, I think by now she would have educated 30 or 40,000 people at absolutely nominal cost. And it's not free of cost because there's not free things don't have value in us. So she charges something very, very nominal, and she has given the gift of education. So the book Unsung was published in 2007. It helped raise over 90 lakhs to the causes of these heroes. It sold over 6,500 copies. Became a case study at IIM Bangalore, and it also transformed the lives of people who read it. People wrote to me saying that it kind of helped them do away with their cynicism. It showed them what real love is, and that it also helped them find meaning in their own lives, And one thing that I have learned from this whole project is that, what do all these heroes have in common is that they, speak their mind. They speak their mind. They say whatever they think and do whatever they say, 24/7, 365. It's a very difficult and it's a very courageous thing to do, to say what you believe in. It's not say whatever you want to, but speak, constantly say whatever you believe in and do what you say all the time, without any let up. That's, I think, a great sign of a role model, and all of them have that. That's so the first book, kind of did very well, and some people came forward and told me, "Why don't you do another book?" So I said, it's very difficult to raise money for all this project, and some two individuals, philanthropists, came forward to fund a second book, and we came up with another one recently, and that too has chronicled the lives of 7 more heroes, and several writers and photographers have contributed, not just my work, of several others as well. To give you a quick glimpse of it, there's Narayan Reddy, who is an organic farmer who lives in the outskirts of Bangalore, whose net worth may be about 50 or 100 crores, but what he wears is always worth about 200 rupees, and he's traveled the world in that, and he lives in most incredibly simple life, and he speaks only about agriculture, but it's always also about life, all the time. It's him. This is Niketu Iralu, who lives in Konoma, Nagaland, who has brought about peace in their village after some 30 or 40 years of internal strife and insurgency, with a process called honest dialogue, basically listening to each other, and not speaking without listening. That's his village. Javed Ahmad Thak in Anantnag district, this is a photograph by a photographer called Amit Mehra. He became paraplegic after being hit by a terrorist bullet. When he kind of recovered, and he's still wheelchair bound, he set up a school to teach life and computer skills to people, and took on the children of known terrorists willingly, the joy of forgiveness. He said, what have they done anything wrong? It is their parents or father who has done it, That's him. Rajendra Yadav, who's ran the Hindi literary magazine called Hans for several years, which was founded by Munshi Premchand. And it's very important to give a voice to vernacular writers, to bring vernacular writing, local languages, into the fore, and that he has done and he's no more now. Yeah, this is Satyu Sarangi, who lives in Bhopal. He went to Bhopal when he heard about the tragedy in mid-80s, and he was doing his PhD in metallurgy. He quit, and he's lived there ever since. He set up something called Sadbhavana Trust, and been working for the rights of the survivors and also giving them medical care, and for the last 30 plus years. Sugata Kumari from Kerala, who is a poet and an activist. She was instrumental in saving the Silent Valley in the 70s and 80s, and she has set up, apart from being, she's a poet laureate, she's won several awards, kids writing. She set up this organization called Abhaya, which looks after destitute women, mentally ill women, children, and gives them a life. Reggie and Lalita George, doctor couple who live in a little village called Sithilingi in Tamil Nadu, not too far from Bangalore, and they finished their medical degree and willingly decided to go to a village and not work in the city. And they have spent their entire life there, helping the poor with medical facilities and also several other crafts initiatives. You will be surprised perhaps to know that India's health spending on public health is 1.3% of our GDP, which is some of the lowest in the world. This 1.3% also includes expenditure on hygiene. So the public health expenditure is very, very little. People really can't afford good health care even today. But most people can't afford, and this kind of efforts by people like Reggie and Lita is quite laudable. So this is a story of, this is what photography can do. Honest photography, if you really, understand your job and your place in the society and do your work as honestly as you can, photography can really change lives. It can impact the people you photograph. It can impact you. What it has done to me over the years, over 33 years, has helped me to be a little more humble, and I'm trying to, also to speak what I think and do what I say all the time. I've not succeeded in it. Perhaps one day I will, but it has really helped me to be a little more humble. Thank you.